Okay, let's unpack this. When you think of ancient Roman cuisine, you probably picture these, lavish banquets.
Reclining diners, grapes, the whole scene.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But our deep dive into the sources shows something far more dramatic. We're not talking about one Roman food culture.
No, not at all. We're really discussing two entirely separate dining worlds.
Right. And they're existing at the same time in the same city.
Absolutely. And what was on your table was this perfect, completely rigid reflection of your class.
It was more than just about being hungry then.
Oh, much more. The Roman dining table, the mensa, it was a symbol. It was all about power, morality, and your entire identity.
And the funny thing is, the foundation for this whole structure, the very backbone of the diet for
Yeah.
everyone, was actually incredibly simple.
It was. It all came down to three core pillars, universal across the whole empire.
Which were
Grain, olive oil, and wine.
the non-negotiables.
The non-negotiables. And then you'd have your basics, legumes, some vegetables like cabbage, leeks, onions.
Then famous garum.
And of course, the ever-present, very pungent, and totally essential garum, that fermented fish sauce.
So the ingredients were pretty much universal.
In theory, yes. Everyone had access to some form of grain or wine.
But the key takeaway here, the thing that created this massive class divide, it wasn't what they were eating, but the who, how, and how often.
That's the entire story. It's the quality, the preparation, the quantity, and crucially, where it all came from. That's what split Roman society in two.
So let's start at the bottom. The vast majority of people in Rome, the common folk, what did their daily meal actually look like?
It was simple, very repetitive, and the main goal was just satiety.
Just feeling full?
Just getting through the day. The core of that diet wasn't even bread, but a thick porridge called puls.
Puls, right? You hear that term a lot. So this was basically Rome's fundamental carb.
It was. Think of it as Rome's ancestral bread. It's just a thick mash of grain, maybe barley cooked with water.
Why porridge instead of bread, though? Was it just easier?
It was cheaper, it was economical. You could stretch a small amount of grain much, much further in a porridge than you could baking a loaf of bread. A family could make it last.
And I'm guessing the flavor was minimal.
Minimal to non-existent. If you were lucky, you might throw in some garlic, some onions, maybe a few olives. But for many, it was just grain and water.
So what about protein? We think of meat as a staple today, but for the Roman poor, that wasn't the case at all.
It was almost non-existent. For the common person, meat wasn't a habit. It was an event.
An event.
A huge event. If they got any meat, it was usually the scraps after a public sacrifice during a big religious festival.
The leftovers.
The leftovers, the head, the intestines, the tough cuts. Otherwise, it just wasn't affordable.
And the wine. Romans were famous for drinking wine, but I can't imagine the quality was very good for the average person.
It was terrible. It was low quality, heavily watered down, and often, vinegary. Sometimes on purpose. Yeah, they turn it into something called pasca, which was a kind of acidic, refreshing drink for soldiers and laborers. But here's the really fascinating part.
Okay.
They often drank this light, diluted wine instead of water.
Wait, they drank wine to stay sober? That sounds completely backwards.
It does, but it makes sense when you think about Roman sanitation. The water quality in the cities could be awful, full of disease.
I see.
But the winemaking process with the fermentation made it safer. So a low-alcohol, watery wine was ironically a healthier choice. It was about hydration, not getting drunk.
That really gives you a sense of just how tough daily life was. Okay, let's leave the world of porridge and vinegar wine.
A sharp turn.
A very sharp turn. Let's move to the patricians, the elites, where food goes from being a necessity to this elaborate statement of show, status, and power.
It's an astronomical shift. The elite menu was designed to impress, to shock, and to prove you had limitless wealth.
They weren't just eating.
They were performing.
Yeah.
We're talking whole stuffed wild boar, dormice cooked in honey, exotic seafood.
Give us some of the most memorable, most over-the-top examples.
Well, the famous ones are pure showmanship. Think peacock, served with all its feathers put back on for display.
Wow.
Or the truly legendary and completely pointless flamingo tongue.
Flamingo tongue. Seriously.
Just the tongue. It wasn't about the taste.
So the flavor almost didn't matter as much as the story behind the dish.
That is the crucial metric for status. Our sources, especially the satires, they confirm that rarity was everything.
So a fish from a far-off province was better than a local one.
Exponentially better. Imagine a huge fish. If it's caught locally, fine, it's valuable. But if you transport that same fish alive, packed in snow, from the Black Sea.
It's a statement.
It's a statement about your power, your wealth, your reach. It shows you command the empire's resources.
And that idea even applied to something as basic as Garum.
Absolutely. Garum was perfectly stratified. The common person used a cheap local version. But the elite demanded Garum sociorum, the most expensive kind, imported all the way from Spain or North Africa.
It's incredible. Which brings us to some truly wild territory. The foods that are either extinct now or just completely taboo.
Yeah, this is where it gets strange. I mean, we have to start with what garum actually was.
It wasn't just fish sauce.
Not like we know it. It was a thick, pungent sauce made from fermented fish guts and organs.
Guts and organs. The smell must have been
Overwhelming. Modern chefs have tried to reconstruct it, but that's as close as we get now.
Thank goodness. And then there are the animals they ate that are hard to stomach, so to speak.
Yes, the fatted dormouse.
The dormouse.
This little creature was kept in a special jar, force-fed walnuts and chestnuts until it was fat, and then roasted, often stuffed with honey and poppy seeds.
It sounds like something from a fantasy novel.
A true delicacy, and of course now it's completely banned to eat them in Europe.
Rightly so. But beyond the strange animals, there's a darker side to their sweeteners, isn't there?
A very dark side. And it's a theory that some scholars think contributed to the decline of the elite class. They loved sweet flavors, and they used a lot of defrutum, a sweet wine syrup.
And what was the problem with that?
The problem was how they made it. The long boiling process to reduce the grape juice often took place in lead-lined containers.
Oh no, so the lead would leach directly into the sweetener.
Exactly. It infused the syrup with lead acetate, which actually tastes sweet. They were sweetening their food with poison.
Wow, so they were literally poisoning themselves, generation after generation.
That's the theory. Chronic lead poisoning among the elite, affecting their health, their fertility, their minds. It was a poison pleasure built right into their diet.
It's a powerful idea that all their wealth couldn't save them from their own methods. But even with all this excess, the Roman kitchen wasn't a total free-for-all, was it? There were attempts to regulate it.
That's what's so fascinating. The state was deeply concerned about this. They repeatedly tried to impose lex sumptuary luxury laws.
Luxury laws. Why did the government care how much a rich person spent on dinner?
It was mainly moral. The state feared that all this decadence was undermining traditional Roman virtues. You know, austerity, discipline.
So being a foodie was seen as un-Roman.
It was seen as a sign of soft living, of corruption that could weaken the ruling class. So they tried to police dinner party menus.
But did it work?
Not really. The sources make it pretty clear that while the laws existed, the rich always found clever ways around them. It just highlights the hypocrisy of it all.
Let's move to the setting for these feasts. It wasn't just about the food. The whole atmosphere was part of the show. The triclinium.
The iconic three-couch room. Guests would recline while they ate, which was the first sign of status. You're not sitting up to work, you're at leisure.
And the seating chart was a minefield, I imagine.
Hugely political. You were seated based on your social status. The host had the most honored spot. The very layout of the room was a map of power.
Okay, we have to address the legend. The vomiting room. Was that a real thing?
The vomitorium. That's a myth, mostly. Or at least a misunderstanding. A vomitorium was actually an exit passageway in an amphitheater for crowds to spew out, not for, well, you know.
Right. But while the dedicated room might be a myth, the actual practice of overeating certainly wasn't.
Oh, absolutely not. Gluttony was very real. The meal was a multi-sensory performance that lasted for hours.
It was dinner theater.
Exactly. Poetry was read, music was played, philosophy was debated. The food was just the centerpiece for all the social and political networking that defined elite Roman life.
And no one used that performance better than the emperors themselves. Their appetites were a political brand.
A perfect case study. Take Augustus. He made a huge show of having simple tastes. Bread, cheese, figs.
That was pure propaganda, wasn't it?
Pure propaganda. He was showing he was above the decadence of the late Republic, a man of simple virtue.
But then you get the emperors who went the other way.
Completely. Tiberius was a known gourmet, obsessed with seafood. And then you have Caligula, who just used his table as a pure show of force. Gold plates, food that cost an insane amount of money.
Just to prove he could.
Just to remind everyone of his absolute power. It was a psychological weapon.
And then Nero and Domitian took it to another level entirely. One theatrical, the other terrifying.
Nero was the showman. Long, scandalous feasts where he would sing and perform. But then you have Domitian, who was known for hosting these silent fear-filled dinners.
Fear-filled.
The decor was all black. The atmosphere was one of pure terror. Guests apparently wondered if the next course might be their last. The food was just a prop in a performance of tyranny.
So bringing this all back to our main idea, Rome's kitchen was, it was literally a map of its power structure.
It was. What you ate showed who you were, where you stood, and most importantly, who you ruled.
The imperial stomach was fed by conquest.
Exactly. Spices from India, wine from Gaul, that high-end garum from Spain. The elite dining table was a summary of the empire's reach and its military success.
And we know all this because the Romans themselves were writing about it. This isn't just speculation.
No, the sources are fantastic. You have cookbooks like Apicius's De Re Coquinaria, but you also have the critic Seneca complaining about luxury and Juvenal's brilliant satires mocking the whole system.
It paints this incredible, essential picture of how a society organizes itself around something as basic as food.
It really does. When you trace the supply chains and the social rules, you realize something profound.
What's that?
That the story of Rome, and maybe every empire that followed, is that an empire first feeds its stomach, then the world. That link between food, power, and decay is one of the most compelling parts of their history for you to explore.